So here we have an interview with Simon Carter in his studio. I'm going to ask him a few questions. So Simon, what are your first thoughts when you get up in the morning and painting, a day when you might be painting?
Well, that's interesting. What my first thoughts? I think the best days are the days in the studio, and I'm always grateful that I can come into the studio. I know some artists don't have have to spend a lot more time out teaching and various things, but I do spend a lot of time in the studio. But I am very grateful every morning when I come in here that I have that opportunity.
So you come into the studio before you go out painting. So when you do go out, because I know you go out on morning walks, what are you looking out for? What are you thinking?
Yeah, years ago, I probably do go out for a walk every morning and bring some drawings back and sort of work in the studio. Now I tend to probably go out a couple of mornings a week for slightly longer. I think what I'm looking for, I've got regular walks. I go into the landscape. It's mainly along the sea walls, out onto Walton backwaters. And what I'm looking for is that moment as you're walking along when things start to stop sliding around and so all of a sudden something locks together and you see things in relation to each other in a really interesting kind of way, in almost an abstract way. But and they're the moments when I stop and maybe do 2 or 3 drawings.
Yes, because your work is sort of figurative meets abstract, so it's that sort of crossover.
I think it's like taking observation. So it's all based on observation. I don't think I'm fabricating anything. It's all based on observation, things I've seen, things I've noted down out in the landscape. But it's in the studio. It's transforming those observations into just paint.
That's probably the tricky bit, I would imagine.
Yes.
Do you get all the information you need, or do you have to go back sometimes?
Yeah, it's a constant. It's a kind of a dialogue between the landscape and the paintings in the studio, and that kind of dialogue is conducted in the drawings I make.
So when you see a landscape that sort of looks sort of like an abstract, do you have an idea of how you want the painting to look at the end of the process, or is it something that constantly evolves, and do you want it to constantly evolve?
Yeah, all of that. I think when I see something that interests me, there's a germ of a painting in there. So it might be a certain set of shapes, or the way the light is catching water, or there's there might be a lot of different things that contribute to you wanting to stop and draw that thing. But then it kind of develops towards painting, and when you're in the studio, you're working on the painting, and then you allow the painting sort of to develop itself even further. So sometimes it's not, you think you know what you want, but actually the painting, you realise you end up wanting something you didn't know you wanted.
So you let the painting dictate to a degree.
Yeah, you sort of go with it to a degree. Yes.
And are there other artists that perhaps, if you're stuck, you might look at, or have inspired you throughout the years that you'll go to?
Yeah, there's a lot. I look at a lot of other artists. Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've not been able to really get out and about and see other art. But I look at there's most paintings I find interesting. So going back to the early galleries, sort of the pre-Renaissance galleries at the National Gallery are some of my favourite ones. But things like Roysdale's landscape paintings, Constable, Van Gogh, you come through to sort of Emil Nolde, but sort of more contemporary ones, who am I looking at? De Kooning, George Baselitz, and then there's a whole raft of my contemporaries that I look at, mainly on Instagram at the moment, but they are always inspiring.
And did you always know you wanted to be an artist, or was it something as you were a teenager or an adult? Or did it start very young?
It did start very young. I can't remember ever wanting to be anything else. I think I can vaguely remember wanting to be a butcher when I was very small. But apart from that, it's always been I wanted to be an artist. And as I've gone through education, you go from one step to the next. And it's not until you get to the end of your degree and all of a sudden you realise you're not actually trained to do anything other than look and paint. And then I worked for about 16 years as part-time as a postman.
Was there any pressure on you from your family to get sort of, inverted commas, a proper job?
My parents were very good, and I don't think I think they tried to make sure that is what I wanted to do when I went off to art school, and that there was other suggestions that came up, I remember, but they basically let us do what we wanted to do. I think my big bonus was I stayed near home, and so they saw my kids growing up. So that was a big bonus.
And has your inspiration changed over the years, or gradually changed?
No, I think I've seemed to be very locked into the local landscape.
Or your technique? Is your technique? I haven't seen your very early work, so I don't. Has your technique always been?
I think there's always been a kind of that. What I like is that kind of openness and kind of roughness in painting, where you can feel like you can see everything that's happened to the painting. There's a kind of nothing's hidden away. No, the brush strokes aren't smoothed out, or the alterations you've made in the painting are still visible. I like all that openness.
So you use acrylic, watercolor. Do you paint in oils at all?
I used to paint in oils, but several years ago now, I got this idea of using acrylics as an underpainting, to sort of get things going with acrylics. And actually, as soon as I started using them, I found them really engaging and really interesting, because there's not many things you can do technically with acrylics that will make it go wrong. Whereas with oils, there's quite a few things you can make go wrong.
Yes, and it takes longer to dry.
It takes a lot longer to dry.
And it stains the carpet.
Yeah. I just like the way that you can layer something up quite quickly, or if there's a drastic change of mind, sort of 2 days into the painting, you can quite easily change it with acrylics. Whereas, if you wanted to put a yellow over a blue in an oil painting, you've got to get rid of all that blue, otherwise it goes yucky green. So I just really enjoy painting.
So you're just driven to paint. That's what you do, really.
Yes, that is what yes.
And
I think
will always
that is what
do
I
by the sound of it.
I think it is part of, it doesn't feel like there's me and then there's painting. It's, it's kind of the same kind of thing. It's just what I do and what I am.
All right, well, thank you, Simon. That's brilliant.